The wind cut through the trees like a knife through old bark, sharp and unrelenting. Snow swept sideways in thick, blinding sheets, driven by a storm that had crept in from the mountains like a wolf stalking wounded prey. Caleb tugged his coat tighter, though the gesture was pointless. The cold had already sunk deep into his bones. His horse limped beneath him, sides heaving, each step slower than the last. A bloodstain darkened the animal's flank, smeared and crusted, from a wound neither man nor beast had had the strength to treat. It would not survive another night. Caleb's beard was stiff with ice, his breath shallow. He could no longer feel his fingers. The forest was closing in, snowdrifts rising like dunes, branches sagging under the weight of white. He didn't know how long he'd been riding. Days blurred together when your mind was half frozen and your body ran on muscle memory alone. He had stopped thinking about destinations. There was only forward, and the need to not die today. His satchel thudded lightly against his hip with each step, the contents shifting. A broken compass, a rusted tin of beans, a blooded rag wrapped around something heavier than it should have been. He hadn't opened it since the river crossing. He didn't need to. Thunder cracked, deep and long like cannon fire. The kind that made men duck instinctively, even years after the war had ended. Caleb didn't duck. He stared into the blizzard like he could outstare God. He wasn't sure if he still believed in God. If he was watching, he had a cruel sense of humor. Branches snapped behind him. The horse shuddered, ears twitching, nostrils flaring. Caleb twisted in the saddle and squinted into the wall of snow. Nothing. Maybe the wind. Maybe wolves. Maybe worse. He touched the rifle strapped behind his saddle. Frost clung to the trigger guard. He didn't have the bullets to waste on ghosts. The terrain sloped downward, and the trees opened slightly, revealing a narrow ravine. Below, barely visible through the flurry, was something unnatural, a dark, straight line. A roof. A cabin. He blinked to make sure it wasn't a mirage. It wasn't. He coaxed the horse forward with a quiet grunt. The animal stumbled, nearly fell, then regained itself. Caleb's heart pounded harder with each step. Shelter meant survival. Or it meant someone else had claimed it first. Either way, he had no choice. The cabin looked like it hadn't seen company in years. Logs warped, snow piled high against the walls, the porch half collapsed. No smoke from the chimney. No footprints. But the door stood intact. Solid. A flicker of hope passed through him like heat in a frostbitten hand. He dismounted stiffly, legs trembling. The horse collapsed behind him, gave one last wheezing exhale, and lay still. He knelt beside it, pressed a hand to its neck. The silence said enough. "Sorry, girl," he whispered, brushing ice from the mare's muzzle. Then he stood, slung the satchel across his shoulder, and approached the door. He knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. "Anyone in there?" His voice was a rasp. "I'm not looking for trouble. Just need warmth. Just a night." Still nothing. He placed his gloved hand on the doorframe, pushed. It groaned open with reluctant resistance. Darkness spilled out like breath from a cave. He waited at the threshold, listening. Wind howled behind him. Inside was deathly still. He stepped in slowly, boots crunching on icy floorboards. The scent of old smoke and dried blood lingered faintly, almost hidden beneath the musk of mildew. The hearth was cold, ashes long dead. A table lay overturned, chairs broken, shelves empty. The place had been looted or abandoned. He couldn't tell which. Then he heard it. A sound so faint it almost escaped him. A groan. Human. His hand flew to the revolver at his belt. Slowly, he moved toward the source, a shape hunched against the far wall, near the stove. It was difficult to tell if it was alive. Just a pile of rags and hair and blood. He stepped closer. A woman. Barely conscious, eyes fluttering, face pale as bone. Her wrists were bound with coarse rope, looped through a rusted iron ring bolted to the stove side. One of her ankles was tied as well. She looked young. 20, maybe 25. Blood pooled beneath her, too much of it. Her dress was soaked with it. And her stomach. Dear God. She was pregnant. Caleb froze, staring. His mind reeled. How long had she been here? Who had left her like this? And why? Her lips moved. Barely a whisper. Help, help me. He dropped to one knee, lowering his weapon, scanning the ropes. Thick knots, tight and cruel. "Who did this to you?" he asked. She shook her head weakly, wincing. Her body spasmed with a wave of pain. "Please," she gasped. "The baby." He didn't argue. He pulled his knife and began sawing at the rope, careful not to cut her. Her skin was raw where the bindings had rubbed. As he cut the last knot, she slumped forward and he caught her, cradling her head against his chest. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you." Her breath came in shallow bursts. She tried to speak again, but he pressed a finger to her lips. "Later. Save your strength." He lifted her gently and carried her to the cot in the corner, dusting off the moldy wool blanket with one arm while supporting her with the other. The mattress was lumpy, but it would have to do. He eased her down, pulled the blanket over her, and turned toward the stove. It was stone cold, but intact. Firewood lay in a splintered pile near the hearth. Whoever had left her must have assumed she wouldn't need heat. He worked quickly, building a small teepee of kindling, striking his last match. The flame caught, flickered, then grew. Orange light danced across the walls. She watched him, her eyes sunken but still searching. "What's your name?" he asked as he fed the fire. "Eliza," she whispered. "Caleb. Caleb Shaw." She nodded weakly. They said they'd come back. His blood chilled in ways the storm never could. "Who?" "Eliza." Her voice broke. "Please, don't let them take the baby." He crossed the room, crouched beside her. "They are not taking anything," he said. "You're safe now." She gritted her teeth, her whole body racked with another contraction. She screamed, curling forward. "You in labor," Caleb muttered, more to himself than her. He looked around. There were no clean cloths, no water, nothing. He tore the least dirty carton from the window, shredded it into strips, found a dented tin basin, filled it with snow, and set it on the stove to melt. "I don't know how to do this," he muttered. Eliza moaned. He glanced at her, at the blood, at her eyes brimming with pain and panic. But he couldn't walk away. He remembered another face. Softer. His wife, Mary. Pale on their bedroom floor, hands clutching her belly, breath coming in sharp, fast bursts. A midwife too late. A stillborn child. The screams. The silence afterward. "I failed once," he said, barely a whisper. "Not again." The snow melted slowly. He soaked a cloth and wiped her forehead. "You're going to be all right," he said. "I'll stay with you." Her eyes met his. Something in them changed, fear giving way to the tiniest flicker of trust. Outside, the storm raged louder. Time passed strangely after that. Minutes stretched. Eliza drifted in and out of awareness. Caleb kept the fire going, wrapped her legs in wool, massaged her lower back when she screamed. She gripped his forearm like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. Blood kept coming. Too much. He didn't say anything. He just worked. At some point, she dozed. Caleb sat in a broken chair by the fire, watching snow pile higher outside the cracked window pane. He tightened his coat, stared at the revolver resting on the table. If they came back, whoever they were, he'd have one shot per man. No mistakes. The wind screamed louder than ever. And then, a sound. Footsteps. He stood fast, heart hammering. Not the wind. Not an animal. Boots. Crunching snow. More than one pair. Eliza stirred. "No," she murmured. "No, no." Caleb snatched the revolver, blew out the lantern. The fire dimmed to embers. He ducked beside the window, peering through a slit in the curtain. Shapes. 3 men. Moving toward the cabin. He counted them. Tall. Armed. One carried a lantern that cast orange halos through the storm. Another dragged something behind him. Laughter, harsh, coarse, like metal grinding bone. Eliza whimpered. Caleb turned to her. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "I'll handle this." She looked at him, eyes wide, lips trembling. He stepped to the door, revolver raised, every muscle tensed. He'd been in battles before, watched men die screaming in mud. But this felt colder. Closer. The lantern outside paused. A fist raised. Knock. 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 "Eliza," a voice drawled. "Daddy's home." Caleb held his breath. The knob turned. The door creaked inward an inch. Snow whirled in, caught in the firelight. Caleb stood back, just beyond view, revolver aimed steady at chest height. His breath was slow and deliberate, as if he could freeze time by willing it. Then the man stepped into view. Tall, coarse wool coat, a wide grin carved deep into a gaunt, weather-worn face. His eyes glinted with something that was neither joy nor rage, just hunger. The kind of hunger that made wolves out of men. He held a pistol loosely in one hand, fingers drumming against the trigger guard. "Don't shoot," Caleb said, calm and low. The man froze. Another shadow loomed behind him. Then another. All armed. All dressed like the wilderness had raised them, layers of mismatched cloth, animal hides, dried blood crusting their boots. Caleb stepped forward just enough for them to see he wasn't bluffing. "Put the gun down," he said. The tall man didn't. He smiled wider. "Well," he said, voice syrupy and southern, "that's a warm welcome. I asked you to drop it. You the new man, then?" He looked around the room like he'd entered his own parlor. "She get herself another one already? Mighty fast, Eliza." "She didn't get anyone," Caleb snapped. "You're going to leave now." One of the others, a stockier man with pockmarked cheeks, laughed. "He's got guts. I give him that." The tall man finally loaded his pistol, letting it dangle by his thigh, though not far enough to stop a quick draw. "You ain't from around here," he said, taking a slow step forward. "That's plain. Otherwise you'd know who I am." "I don't care." "Oh, you should." He pointed the pistol at the floor, cocked his head like a dog sniffing something curious. "My name's Luther Pike. This here's my land, and everything on it." He gestured lazily around the cabin. "Which includes that girl over there. And now you, stranger. You made yourself part of the property." Caleb didn't flinch. "She's not your property. She's giving birth." Pike's grin faded into something colder. "She was supposed to be giving birth for me." The words sank like stones. Eliza stirred behind Caleb, moaning softly. Pike's eyes flicked toward her. "You tied a woman to a stove," Caleb said. "Left her bleeding out." "She tried to run," Pike said. "That has consequences." "She's not going anywhere now. She's mine. I found her, raised her like a daughter, fed her, kept her warm." His eyes narrowed. "You don't get to play hero. You don't know a damn thing about how things work out here." "I know enough to see a monster when I'm looking at one." Pike chuckled, slow and mirthless. Then, without warning, he raised the pistol. Caleb fired first. The shot cracked like thunder. Pike stumbled back with a roar, clutching his shoulder as blood spread across his coat. The second man lunged forward with a growl, but Caleb ducked behind the doorframe and fired again. The bullet struck wood. The third man grabbed Pike and yanked him back outside, shouting curses into the wind. Caleb slammed the door shut, dropped the bar across it. His chest heaved. Smoke coiled from the revolver's muzzle. Eliza was crying softly, curled around her belly. "They'll come back," she gasped. "I know." He reloaded with trembling fingers. "Only 2 bullets left. We can't stay here." "I can't move," she whispered. "Not like this." Caleb looked around. There were no good options. The storm still raged, and now they were hunted. He knelt beside her again. "Then we make them come to us." "No," she sobbed. "They'll kill you." "I'm not letting them take you." Her hand found his. She squeezed it, weak but grateful. He saw it in her eyes. Desperation and trust mingled into something raw and human. He stayed with her through the next contraction. It was worse than the last. She bit into a scrap of leather to keep from screaming. Sweat glistened on her forehead despite the cold. Between waves of pain, she whispered, he was going to raise the baby as his own. Call it salvation. Salvation. He said the world ended after the war. That he was the only real thing left. And we were supposed to rebuild it. In his image. Caleb clenched his jaw. He'd heard that kind of talk before. Soldiers who came back broken, building kingdoms in their minds to make sense of the ashes. "He took me from a burned town," Eliza continued. "I was the only survivor. I didn't remember much after the fire. But I do now. I remember the screaming." Caleb touched a hair, gently brushing it from her eyes. He won't touch you again. I promise. She nodded, eyes fluttering shut. He moved quietly through the cabin, blocking windows with furniture, checking corners. He turned over a rotted floorboard and found a rusty hunting knife, a length of chain. No more bullets. Just old wood in desperation. The storm began to ease by dawn. The wind softened, and snow fell in light flakes. The sky above the tree line turned bruised purple. Caleb stood by the door, revolver in one hand, knife in the other. He knew what came next. He didn't have to wait long. They returned in silence. No shouted threats. No cocky laughs. Just three dark shapes moving through the trees, like ghosts. Pike had bandaged his shoulder with a blooded strip of cloth. His eyes gleamed with a different kind of fury now. No longer amused. Focused. Caleb stepped onto the porch. Snow crunched underfoot. "You're bleeding," Pike called. "So are you." "Thought I might give you a choice," Pike said, voice low. "You leave. Right now. You walk away. No more blood. You've already bled enough people." Pike raised his hand. The other two men flanked him, weapons ready. Caleb lowered his revolver slightly. "You come in here, and I shoot the first man through the door." Pike smirked. "Then what?" Caleb didn't answer, because he didn't know. The door behind him opened slightly. Eliza stood there, pale, barefoot, holding the curtain rod like a spay. Blood streaked her legs, but her eyes were sharp with fury. Pike's face darkened. "Girl, you better get back inside." "No," she said. Her voice was raw but clear. "I'm not afraid anymore." "Lisa." "She's not yours," Caleb said. "She never was." Pike took a step forward. Caleb fired. The bullet missed intentionally, striking the tree inches from Pike's head. Bark exploded in a white burst. "You've got one shot left," Pike said. "And you've got three men standing in front of a cabin with one door." For a moment, the forest was silent. Then Pike chuckled, slow and cold. "You think you've got it figured, huh? You think you're the only one who's ever stood in the mud and stared down death? I know what it costs." Pike raised his hand. The other two men moved. One ran right, trying to flank the cabin. Caleb spun, fired again, last bullet. It struck the man in the leg. He dropped with a cry. The third man charged, axe raised. Caleb dropped the empty revolver and met him head-on. They collided like animals. Caleb drove the knife upward, catching the man under the ribs. Warm blood sprayed his face. The man screamed, staggered back. Caleb ripped the blade free. Pike advanced. Now. Caleb grabbed the curtain rod from Eliza's hand and lunged. Pike fired once, missed. They crashed to the ground, fists flying. Pike clawed at Caleb's face. Caleb slammed his head into the floorboard. Pike spat blood, grabbed a shard of broken glass, sliced into Caleb's arm. Pain flared hot and bright. But Caleb didn't stop. He wrestled Pike into a chokehold, blood dripping onto the man's collar. Pike kicked, scratched, bit. His eyes bulged. "You want to own something," Caleb hissed into his ear. "Start with your own damn sins." He squeezed. Pike passed out. Caleb rolled off, panting. Eliza stood over him, shaking, clutching her belly. Behind her, the wounded man moaned and crawled into the snow. The third lay still. They didn't need to chase him. The fight was over. For now. Caleb knelt beside Eliza. She leaned into him, too tired to cry. "It's almost time," she whispered. "I know." They dragged Pike inside, tied him with the same rope he'd once used on her. Caleb locked him in the cellar. The wounded man crawled into the trees. Caleb let him go. Let him carry the story with him. By dusk, the storm had cleared completely. The cabin was warm. The fire burned strong. And the baby came. Tiny, quiet, breathing. Eliza sobbed as she held him to her chest. Caleb sat beside her, both of them trembling from exhaustion and wonder. She looked at him through tears. "Thank you." He didn't speak, just reached out and touched the child's head. She leaned back and closed her eyes. The world outside the cabin was still dangerous. Pike wouldn't stay locked forever. But in this moment, this quiet, violet moment, they had won something. Something that could not be taken. The morning broke with pale light filtering through frustrated windows. Outside, the snow reflected a cold, white silence. Inside, the baby whimpered softly in Eliza's arms. Caleb sat by the fire, eyes locked on the cellar door. He hadn't slept. Not really. Just drifted in and out of dreams that smelled of gunpowder and blood. Eliza stirred. "Is he still down there?" Caleb nodded. "Didn't make a sound all night." She looked down at the infant, then toward the boarded-up windows. "He won't stay quiet for long." "I know." He got up, stretching sore muscles. The bruises from the fight were blooming now, along his ribs, across his forearm. The slice on his bicep had crusted over but throbbed with each heartbeat. He pulled his coat on and opened the door. The world outside was painfully bright. The snow had stopped, but wind swept over the treetops, whispering threats it couldn't yet carry out. He stepped off the porch and scanned the woods. No tracks, no movement. Only the faint crimson trail, where one of Pike's men had crawled away. He followed it a few paces, stopping at a patch of disturbed snow. There were blood-smeared branches where the man had pulled himself through brush. But then it vanished, swallowed by deeper woods. Maybe he bled out. Maybe he made it back to whatever hole they'd crawled from. Either way, Caleb knew they weren't alone out here anymore. He returned to the cabin. Eliza had managed to get the baby to sleep. She looked stronger than the night before, though her face was still pale, her eyes sunken. "We need supplies," Caleb said. She gave a small nod. "There's a trap line south of the ridge. I used to run it before." Caleb understood. Before Pike. Before the cabin became a prison. "I'll check it. You'll be okay." "I'll manage." He glanced toward the cellar door again. It was chained shut, the heavy wood creaking with cold. Pike had said nothing since they'd thrown him down there. That scared Caleb more than any ranting would have. He stepped outside, armed with the knife and a makeshift spear fashioned from a broken chair leg. The revolver hung uselessly at his side, an empty weight. He moved quickly through the trees, following the ridge Eliza had described. The air was sharp, biting his lungs with every breath. At the trapline, he found 2 rabbits and a grouse. Not much, but enough. He gutted them quickly, wrapping them in torn cloth. As he turned to leave, he caught movement. Just a flicker. Behind a tree, maybe 50 yards off. He froze. Nothing. But the feeling crawled up his spine like frostbite. He turned back toward the cabin, this time moving faster, ears straining for any sound out of place. A snapping twig. A shift in the wind. When he reached the clearing, something was wrong. The front door hung ajar. He ran. Eliza. Inside, the fire was still burning. The baby cried faintly from the corner. But Eliza was gone. The cellar door was wide open. Caleb's heart seized. He peered down the steps. Darkness. "Eliza," he called. Nothing. He grabbed a lantern and descended. The smell hit him first, sweat and something fouler. Blood. No. Old rot. The scent of a place long tainted. He reached the bottom. Chains lay loose on the floor. And the cellar was empty. Pike was gone. And so was Eliza. He stormed back upstairs. The baby shrieked louder now, as if sensing the dread filling the room. Caleb picked him up, trying to soothe him, but his own hands shook too hard. Pike had taken her. But why not the child? He bundled the baby in cloth and strapped him against his chest with rope. There was no time to think. No time to plan. He grabbed the hunting knife, the spear, and headed into the woods, following the only trail that made sense. Blood. Small droplets in the snow. A drag mark here, a heel print there. She fought back. He could see that. Smudged handprints, snapped branches. She was trying to slow him down. He ran for hours. The trail curved toward the river, a narrow, frozen stretch that wound through birch and pine. Caleb stopped only to press his ear to the ice. Nothing beneath but the distant groan of current. He kept going. At the bend, he found her, tied to a tree, mouth gagged, hands bound behind her, bruised, but alive. Caleb rushed forward, cut her free. She fell into his arms, sobbing. He wanted me to choose, she gasped. Said he'd kill the baby if I didn't go with him. Said it was mercy. Caleb's jaw clenched. Where is he? She pointed upstream. He took the sled. With what little daylight remained, they followed the trail, Caleb helping her walk. The baby stowed in his sling, sensing the tension. Eventually, they reached a clearing by the riverbank. Pike was there, standing beside a sled, one hand on the reins, the other holding a pistol. "Thought you'd come," he called out, grinning. Eliza stiffened. "Give me the baby," he said. "No one else has to die." "No," Caleb said. Pike sighed, like a man disappointed in a slow pupil. "You don't get it. This isn't about you. This is bigger. This child, it's the first. The new blood. My redemption. You tried to kill him. I changed my mind. I had a vision. Fire. Cleansing. And this child rising from the ash." His eyes glittered. "I was wrong to tie her up. I see that now. Pain is part of rebirth." Caleb stepped forward, shifting his weight, hand on the knife. "You think you're some kind of prophet. I am something new. Something born out of the fire. I survived when the world burned. We all did. No, you endured. I evolved." Caleb could feel Eliza trembling beside him. "You're sick, Pike." "No, I'm chosen." Without warning, Pike raised the gun. Caleb threw the spear. It struck Pike in the shoulder. He howled, fired, but the shot went wide, shattering a branch. Caleb lunged forward, drawing the knife. Pike swung the pistol wildly, catching Caleb in the ribs. They grappled on the snowy riverbank, feet slipping, blood spraying across the ice. Caleb got him on his back, knife raised. "I should kill you," he growled. Pike laughed, blood bubbling from his mouth. "Go on. Be like me." Caleb froze. Then he drove the knife into the ground beside Pike's head. "No," he whispered. "That's not who I am." He stood, breathing hard. Pike wheezed. "You're weak." "No, I'm free." They left him there, bleeding, rambling. Caleb and Eliza walked back in silence, the baby cooing softly against Caleb's chest. The wind picked up again, but it felt different now, less like a warning, more like a release. At the cabin, they lit the fire again, sat close, held the child between them. Caleb looked at Eliza. "We can't stay here." "No. Do you know the old trail north?" "I do." "Then we go tomorrow." She nodded, and for the first time in days, they both slept. The storm was gone, but blood still stained the snow, and not all ghosts could be buried. The morning air tasted like ash and pine. A weak sun pushed through the frost-caked sky as Caleb stepped out of the cabin for the last time. A pack slung over his shoulder, the revolver holstered on his hip. It was still empty, but its weight grounded him. Inside, Eliza wrapped the baby in a wool shawl, her fingers stiff from cold and nerves. She moved more easily now, the bruises fading from her face, but something in her eyes had changed, clarified. She wasn't waiting to be saved anymore. She handed Caleb a folded cloth. Inside was a small, carved figure, just a wooden wolf, whittled from birch. "For luck," she said. He took it without a word, slipped it into his coat. They left the cabin as the light crept slowly over the treetops, casting long, pale shadows across the snow. Behind them, the door creaked shut one final time. The place had been both prison and sanctuary, witness to violence and birth. Now, it would return to silence. They followed the ridge north, along the old trade path that weaved through the pines. The snow was knee-deep in places, but hardened by cold, so their boots barely broke the crust. Eliza carried the baby, now swaddled tightly, a makeshift sling across her shoulder. Caleb broke trail ahead, watching for prints, traps, or ice. Neither of them spoke much. What words were left to say? The quiet between them wasn't heavy. It was survival silence, where every breath spent on talk might be needed for the next hill, the next fire, the next day. Trust had replaced dialogue. One look, one nod, meant more than whole conversations. By midday, they reached the river crossing, a narrow pass where thick pine logs had once formed a footbridge. Most were gone now, washed away by time and flood. Caleb checked the ice. It groaned but held. He crossed first, slow and steady, then motioned for Eliza. Halfway across, a crack rang out. She froze. "It's okay," Caleb called. "Weight spread. Keep moving." But the baby stirred, let out a cry. A sharp pop echoed again. The ice split beneath her boots. Caleb lunged forward, grabbing her arm just as her foot plunged into the freezing water. He hauled her across, both of them panting, soaked to the knee, the child wailing. On the far bank, they collapsed beside a dead spruce, arms tangled, steam rising from their clothes. Eliza laughed, a hoarse, unexpected sound, somewhere between relief and madness. "First bath in weeks," she muttered. Caleb smiled despite himself. "You sure picked the spy." The baby calmed between them, burrowing against her warmth. After drying what they could, they kept moving. The trail climbed higher into the hills. The trees thinned. Wind bit harder. But with each step, Caleb felt something loosening, like a noose unraveling from around his chest. At a high point near dusk, they stopped. Below, in a distant valley, a faint column of smoke curled upward. A settlement. Maybe 3 miles out. Eliza exhaled. "I didn't think we'd make it." "Neither did I." But he wasn't smiling. Something tugged at him. A weight. He turned away from the valley, toward the dark horizon behind them, toward where Pike had bled into the snow. "Do you think he's still alive?" Eliza asked. Caleb didn't answer right away. "He won't follow," he finally said. "But what if he finds someone else?" "He will. Or someone will find him. That kind of sickness always does." Eliza stared into the dusk. "Then we didn't end it." "No," Caleb said quietly. "But we ended it for us." They set up camp beneath a rock outcrop. Caleb built a fire. Eliza nursed the baby, who fed greedily, eyes wide in the orange light. Caleb couldn't stop watching that child, so small, so fierce in his survival. After the flames settled into embers, Eliza leaned back against a log. "You never told me where you were headed." "I didn't know," he admitted. "Just away." "From what?" "Graveyard in Kansas. Wife. Son. Fever took him." Her breath hitched. He continued, voice rough. "I stayed too long, thinking maybe something could be saved. But you can't bargain with disease. Or death." Eliza placed a hand on his arm. "You still carry them with you." "I carry the guilt. I wasn't there when he died. I was out scavenging food. My wife, she buried him alone." Silence stretched. "I was locked in that cabin 2 winters," she whispered. "I lost everything. My name. My hands. They were mine, but not mine anymore. You know what I mean." He nodded. "Then I thought maybe death was the only door left. And now—" She looked down at the baby. "Now there's something else." The flames flickered between them. Time seemed to slow, cocooned in warmth and pain, and something that almost felt like hope. "I don't know what I'm supposed to be," she said. "Maybe we get to choose," Caleb offered. The wind howled above the rocks, but inside the circle of firelight, the world felt still. The next morning, pale and brittle, they descended toward the valley. As they approached the edge of the settlement, a group of riders spotted them. Cautious but not hostile, they dismounted, rifle slung but not raised. An older woman stepped forward, wore a scarf of faded green and eyes that didn't miss much. "You come from the high ridge?" she asked. Caleb nodded. "Storm hit hard up there." "It did." "Got wounded?" "Some." She studied the child. "That yours?" "No. But his ours now." The woman looked at Eliza, who met her gaze without flinching. "Name's Miriam. We've got food, fire, doctoring. But you earn your keep. That's all we ask." Miriam gestured. "Follow me." They entered the settlement, just a cluster of cabins around a chapel and stable. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played near the frozen creek. Dogs barked, but no one panicked. It felt alive. Caleb and Eliza were given a small cabin. A doctor checked the baby, and food was brought, warm cornbread and stew that made Caleb tear up after the first bite. He worked the next days chopping wood, reinforcing roofs, helping a blacksmith fit new shoes on a stubborn mule. Eliza helped the healer, cleaning bandages, organizing herbs, even delivering one child when labor came too quick for the midwife. She didn't speak much, but the village noticed her quiet strength. The way she held her baby. The way she never asked for more than she needed. One night, after supper, Caleb sat on the porch of their cabin, the wolf carving in his hands. Eliza joined him. They asked if I want to stay permanently, she said. You going to? I think so. You? I don't know yet. She nodded, not hurt, just understanding. You still feel it pulling you? Caleb looked to the hills. Yeah. There's something out there. Not Pike. Something older. Wilder. Then go, she said. He turned to her. Will you be okay? She smiled. You saved me. Twice. You saved yourself. They sat in silence for a long time. In the morning, Caleb packed light, knife, rope, tinder, the carved wolf. He left the revolver behind. It didn't feel like his anymore. At the edge of the settlement, Eliza stood waiting. She handed him a bundle of dried meat and a stitch pouch of herbs. For the road. He nodded, unsure what to say. Then she stepped forward and hugged him, tight, firm, unafraid. You'll find what you're looking for, she whispered. I hope you do too. He kissed the baby's forehead. Then he walked into the trees. The pale morning light broke through the forest canopy, silver and blue, casting long shafts across the path ahead. His breath hung in the cold. Each step felt heavier, yet lighter. Behind him, life continued. Ahead, something unknown waited. But he wasn't running anymore. He was walking toward something. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough.